5 minutes. All right. False alarm.
The glee wasn't over there.
Croeso. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our conference on direct payments, policy practice and innovation. And it's wonderful to see so many people joining us today here in the room from across Wales. I think we've got, pretty much every local authority area represented. But also, I'd like to give a big welcome to those who are joining us online, because we're live streaming this conference today. And I know we've got people at desks up and down Wales signing in and watching us on YouTube. So a very warm welcome to everyone who's taking part in today's event, wherever you may be. Well, we've got an exciting day ahead of speakers, workshops, drama, of the theatrical kind, I hope, not of the crisis kind. But I've got a number of housekeeping arrangements I'd just like to run through with you. To start off with, I'm Rhian Davies. I'm Chief Executive of Disability Wales. And I'm here with the full team at Disability Wales, and I'm just going to introduce them so you know who they are. So we've got Miranda Evans, who's our Policy and Programmes Manager. So she's on keeping an eye on Twitter and Facebook for us. We've got Paula Reid, who I think is still upstairs, but you would have met her on reception. We've got Ruth Naughty. Who's Ruth here? I think everyone... Oh, yeah, Ruth. We've got Ruth and Jodie, who are at the back. So, and we've also got Viv. I think Viv's Viv's there as well. So I'll introduce a bit more about Viv later on. We're the team here today. So if there's anything we can do to assist or make your day as enjoyable and comfortable as possible, do please speak to us or introduce yourself to us, because we'd love to meet you all. In terms of other housekeeping arrangements, if you haven't already found the toilets, the ladies and gents are out through the main door that you've just come in, and there's quite a long corridor, and the gents are first on the left, and then they keep on going, and there's the women's toilets. The accessible toilet is upstairs, and you've got two options to get there. There's the lift, or if you wanted to get a breath of fresh air as well, you can go out through the main door and turn left and out into sort of the grounds area, and you can go around the building that way. So there's two options. There's no need to queue for the lift. There's two options to get up to the accessible toilets. We're not expecting a fire alarm today, so if one goes off and we need to evacuate, again, the fire exit is again through the main door on my right, and then turn left out through the exit into the grounds. If you've are here with mobiles, as you know, we're all very high tech. It'd be good if you could kind of keep them to silent, but we would love you to follow us today and use our hashtag, which is hashtag Direct Payments Wales. If you haven't yet found the Wi-Fi, it is in your conference agenda, and you need to look for the Wi-Fi code, private Wi-Fi, and the password is Kevin Lee Newtown 1234, but it is in your agenda. So do follow us, do tweet. It would be really great to get our hashtag trending today. We do have a photographer here, Natasha Hurst, and Natasha's waving there to my left. I think when you came in, most of you, I think most people were happy to give consent to photos. I know some of you, for quite understandable reasons, don't want to be any photos. If you see Natasha approaching you with a camera, if you just make yourself known to Natasha, if you don't want to be in a photo, and she will, of course, abide by that. We also have here Alan Hughes from 20 Degrees Consulting and his team. Is Alan here? Can't see Alan, he might be upstairs. Alan's team are part of the independent evaluation of our project, Citizen Directed Co-operatives Cymru. So as part of that, they will be doing they're going to, through lunchtime and the breaks, they're going to go around and try and interview everybody with a survey, and some people to do some kind of like Vox Pops interviews. But we'd be really grateful and really appreciate it if you could get involved with that, because it's really important, in terms of the evaluation of the project, that we get as many voices and views as possible. We have a range of support here. We've got the sound system. At a later point, when you have the opportunity to ask questions, I'd be grateful if you could wait for the mic, but our guys from sound systems will be going around with the microphones. We also have the palantypists with to my left, and BSL interpretation. So if you need to move to be nearer the screen or whatever, please feel free to do so. So I think, oh yes, just one final thing. There is, because we're streaming live, and some of you have seen the cameras towards the back of the room, there is quite a bit of cabling around. So we have taped it down, but what we do ask is when you're pushing your chairs back, if you could just be aware of the cabling, because the tape might just get dislodged. So just to be a little bit aware of that. Okay, so I think that is all the housekeeping. So I just make a few kind of opening comments before we introduce our keynote speaker, who I know you've all been waiting for to hear. As far as we're aware, this is the first national conference on direct payments for quite a number of years, and the response to it has been phenomenal. We actually moved venues because there was so much interest and so many people wanted to take part in it. And it's being delivered as part of our Citizen Directed Co-operatives Cymru project, which we're running in partnership with the Wales Cooperative Centre, and it's funded from the Big Lottery Wales Innovation Grant. And the aim of the project is to support greater citizen voice, control and independence in Wales through the take-up of direct payments, via the development of a Citizen Directed Cooperative Support Scheme. And that is a co-op that is run where direct payment recipients, people who receive direct payments, are the members of that co-op and, run it, and they've got their own rules and, deliver services to other direct payment recipients in their area as a citizen-led cooperative. As many of us will know, direct payments was introduced through UK legislation back in 1996. I kind of feel like I'm kind of going back to all those decades, because back in those early years of direct payments being introduced, I was director of Cardiff and Vale Coalition of Disabled People, and we set up and ran the first direct payment support scheme in Wales, and at that time, we felt like we were pioneers. Nobody else in Wales was doing it, so we were going over the border to other disabled people's organisations in Bristol, in Derbyshire, in Southampton to learn from them. And then as we got going, then organisations across Wales then came to us in Cardiff and Vale Coalition to learn from our experience. So it really feels like we're kind of turning full circle, with the project Citizen Directed Cooperatives, because as far as we're aware, it is the first project of its kind in Britain to set up a direct payments cooperative. What I do know from my experience of being involved in direct payments for many years, it does have a transformative effect for so many individuals to be in control of your own support, to have that cash in your own hands, to whether it's to employ your own personal assistants or to use it to go on breaks or to buy particular pieces of equipment that support your independent living. And I know it's made a huge difference for many people in terms of their family life, ability to pursue education, employment, and to contribute in a wide variety of ways to the community and public life in Wales. The project Citizen Directed Cooperatives came about because working with Wales Cooperative Centre, we did some research into whether there were, whether direct payments being delivered through cooperatives had, an impact on increased take-up. So through research with the Wales Cooperative Centre, we commissioned Northumbria University to kind of look into this for us. And what they found was that while there were a number of organisations, particularly disabled people's organisations, that were operating to cooperative principles, there weren't actually any cooperatives running direct payment schemes, particularly ones that were led by citizens themselves. So we used that research to apply successfully to the Big Lottery Innovation Grant to look at how we could set up cooperatives to increase, what has been quite low take-up of direct payments in Wales. And the basis on which we got the funding was that this kind of model hadn't been tested anywhere in the UK before. Yes, there were examples of employer-led cooperatives around social care and direct payments, and there were some multi-stakeholder models, but there were no citizen-led models. The project got off the ground back in October 2014. Although the Social Services and Wellbeing Wales Act had passed, had become law, it wasn't actually to be implemented until April 2016. But through the project, we have been able to raise the profile of direct payments in Wales through workshops targeted at direct payment recipients and those interested in taking them up at local authorities and also at third sector organisations. We've delivered presentations to a wide range of audiences at conferences and seminars across Wales, and we worked with several emerging direct payments cooperatives run by citizens and assisting them with the development of their business plans and kind of testing out the idea in their local area. Through that process of selection, there was one cooperative or fledgling cooperative that seemed to have a lot going for it in terms of sustainability into the future. And that was an emerging co-op based in Monmouthshire. And that was the one that was chosen to get the intensive support through the project to get it off the ground. That group is now called Moncare Cooperative, and their coordinator, Viv Leach. If you could stand and wave to everyone. Viv Leach is here, and I know she'd be really pleased to meet you, talk with you, network with you, to spread the word about the work that the Moncare Cooperative is doing and hoping to do into the future. In addition to setting up the co-op, there are some other things that we were looking to deliver, and one of those is producing a toolkit to share the learning from the project across the 4 years it's been running, and we'll be launching that later on this year at a final project event. And as I say, your participation in the survey later on in the lunch break and doing any Vox Pop interviews will be very much appreciated as part of that, the journey that we've all been on in terms of direct payments. As I mentioned earlier, take-up of direct payments in Wales remains low. The latest figures as of October last year is that there are 5,859 direct payments recipients in Wales out of a total of 147,336 adults who receive social care services. Those are figures for adults. Obviously, there are children and parents of disabled children who also receive. But as we see, you know, it's still, direct payment recipients are still a very small minority of the overall people who receive direct payments in Wales. And compared to other parts of the UK, obviously they have different systems, but, you know, there has been more kind of widespread take-up. So our hope for our conference today is that our conference will act as to further stimulate interest in direct payments, the opportunities that they afford to support independent living, the different ways in which they can be used, and also to share learning on how some of the challenges and barriers to the take-up of direct payments can be overcome. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome our first keynote speaker for the day, Professor Luke Clements, who's the Cerebra professor in, I think it's law, in Leeds University, long title. So I think Luke is known to so many of us in the room as a real and true champion around social care issues and people who use social care, taken many cases, gone to the Court of Human Rights, and we're so thrilled that he can be here with us today. So Luke, croeso mawr.
Right, I'll just find this. There'll be a short fumble. There we go. There we go. And it's, I'll speak till 15:15. Borida, lovely to be here. A miracle to be here. I got completely lost. I hope to get here really early to say hello to lots of friends and colleagues I know are here. But I didn't manage to do that. I've been here before and knew the way, but didn't. So I'm sorry for that. I'm also very sorry that I'm not going to be staying all day. It's fascinating what Rhian's just said, and the idea of co-ops is such a sort of imaginative, innovative idea. I really hope to stay in touch about that. It might breathe some fresh life into this. I'm going to speak for about 20 minutes, which means I should be finished. I've been asked to speak for 20 minutes, which means I'll finish about 15:15, and then some time for discussion or comments or criticisms or telling me off for what I'm going to say. Now, I better move that so I can see it. I did this on the train last night. Unusually, I hadn't been drinking, but I still can't remember anything about it. I'm going to end where I start and start where I end. It's interesting, Rhian's idea of a circle coming round. And I think it is really good to go back to those days before Rhian was born, but when I was in the twilight of my legal career then. John Evans, I don't know how many of you know John Evans, but John Evans is one of the most inspiring disabled people amongst so many. He's one of the very founders of this idea of direct payments and independent living. He's one of the people that escaped from Leonard Cheshire Home 50-odd years ago. He's a Swansea lad, grew up in Swansea. And he says, and I agree with it, that direct payments are not a means, are not an end in themselves. They're a means to an end, and the end is independent living. Direct payments can be transformative for many people, but of course they're not transformative for everybody. And it's a strand. It's the idea that it's one of the many strands that can lead you to have a more independent life if you're a disabled person. So today I'm going to do a bit of technical stuff, and then I'm going to do a rant, which is the normal procedure. What I want to do about the technical stuff is I'll go through it very fast. There's a lot that's happened in direct payments, a lot of ombudsman's cases that I think are really valuable. And I will be writing a much longer paper about this. And this PowerPoint we'll put online. We'll put it probably online on Rhian's organisation, but also we've developed a website, I don't know if you all know about it, called Rhian, which is social welfare law in Wales. And this, I'll write a paper and also the PowerPoint will be placed there. If you don't know about Rhian, I think it's an important thing for me briefly to flag up. At the moment it's attached to my website, and if you go to my website, which is lukeclements.com, and you go to the bottom, the left-hand column, there's a link to Rhian social welfare law on Wales. The problem with Wales is that it is developing its own legal jurisdiction, but Wales' population is just over 5% of England's. It can't justify any legal textbooks. And so there's an awful amount of knowledge that needs to be known, and it's the question of how you put it up there. The Welsh Government, in my opinion, is not going to put up anything that doesn't say that this is a new Jerusalem and everything is working wonderfully and hooray. But it's not working well. But it's very difficult to get that sort of critical voice out there because it's quite difficult, I think, to be, if you're funded by the Welsh Government one way or the other, to be openly critical. Happily, I live in Hereford and I work in my research centres in Leeds. So colleagues and I have created this site, which we hope will be taken over by somebody else. We pray. But for the moment, it's on my website. If you click on Rhian Social Welfare Online, you go to the site. It's named after Rhian. Rhian was a truly inspirational disabled person. His mother and I, Anne James, Anne used to work for the Care Council for Wales, have developed the site. Rhian was a PhD, a doctoral student at Bangor in science, but he was an amazing campaigner for disability rights, profoundly disabled person himself. And very sadly, just over 2 years ago, he died. So we have the site so that his memory, the ripples of his extraordinary life continue to roll out and hopefully make some waves. So there's just about everything you need to know about social welfare law on Wales, and we keep adding to it. And we produce detailed briefings when this direct payment stuff will go on that. and we do a sort of what's new, which Anne does a lot of, which has got, you know, an article every other week or so on issues of relevance, and so that will go there. Just quickly going through the basic stuff on direct payments, as Rhian said, it's in the Social Services and Wellbeing Act now, the act that repealed effectively everything in social care law that had gone before, and it's in sections 53, and that gives the basic stuff. The act gives the sort of skeleton of the right, not much more, and the wicked detail is in the regulations and in the code. It's not very good. The code is very, very brief indeed. There's a real need for fine detail about what authorities should do. That used to exist under the previous legislation. It's not been replicated, largely because I don't think that the Welsh Government's got the resources to do this sort of stuff. And so it's a real pity we don't have that level of detail. And in general, the Social Services and Wellbeing Act did nothing. It just rolled over the previous law. But in doing that, it failed to give us the detailed guidance we had with the previous law. It did change two things, and neither of which I'm going to go into. One is that you can now use your direct payment to buy services from the local authority, which was previously unlawful, which seems to me a very good idea, except local authorities have pretty well stopped providing anything. And the other one, which most people haven't noticed, is that you can use your direct payment to buy residential care, which is a completely daft idea. And nobody knows why that arose, but most people seem to have not noticed it, so let's hope that that stays that way. I mean, that's now for saying that. I just wanted to run through some very, very quickly some useful stuff that's been said by the Ombudsman in England. The Welsh Ombudsman, the Welsh Public Services Ombudsman, is not so... Wales is a much less complaining nation, it seems to me, in these areas. Maybe that's because everything is perfect. And the great thing about the English Ombudsman is that he publishes his reports, whereas in Wales they're not published, which is a real major problem, and it really ought to be sorted out. If the Ombudsman is going to spend a year looking at something and then coming up with some incredibly meaningful report about what's gone wrong, then I think we ought to see it, basically, because what's the point if you don't have it published the way that the English Ombudsman does? And there's been some nice guidance, nice as in National Institute for Health and Clinical Excellence, not nice and as in nice. Just to run through these will, I'll all put them up online, so, and I give them, Disability Wales have got them now anyway. So, a basic point, direct payments are a choice. You can say no. They're not the answer to everybody's difficult problem. Oh, you want something a bit awkward. Well, you'll have to have direct payments because we can't possibly commission that. It would make our brains hurt. And the Ombudsman said that when they do, that you should expect a fully commissioned service within 3 weeks. So they can't use delay. So that's a Lincolnshire report, which I think is very, very valuable. I'm going to talk quite a lot about amount because we're researching the amount. I think the single biggest problem about direct payments is that the amounts are just ridiculously small, and that's killing it. And so we're doing quite a lot of research on that, which I'll mention briefly. But what the Ombudsman has said is that where somebody provides a detailed breakdown of what their needs are, 7 hours a week or whatever, and if the local authority doesn't accept that, they're going to have to justify in fine detail, basically on an Excel spreadsheet, how what they're offering meets your assessed needs. It's not acceptable for the council to say, oh, well, you can use these 4 hours flexibly. What does that mean? Which is happening, and I'm going to look at that issue about flexibility as well. So we need detail. We need fine detail in the assessment and the care plan. and then we need the direct payments to be the other side of the equation that meets that fine detail. There's a case, reductions are of course a big issue, I'll come on to again in a minute, that we're a council, councils will say, yeah, we're doing the food preparation, we're doing the house, which is nonsense. And the Ombudsman said, you don't use your DLA for house because you're a disabled person, and it compensates you for all the extra costs, not there to compensate the local authority for their problem. Increasingly, we wrote a paper, that's what your DLA is for, because it seems to be for everything that social services used to do. Where you have a suitable person, where you're not deemed to be able to exercise decision-making power to choose to have a direct payment, so it's paid to a suitable person. Well, the suitable person may not want to employ somebody. The suitable person may want to use an agency, because if you've got a load of money, you don't normally employ somebody to cut your hedge or whatever. You go to somebody, an agency to do it. So if you are a suitable person and you want direct payments, then the local authority should pay you the agency rate, not the much lower rate, expecting you to employ somebody. Quite a big case that was. I think there was over £100,000 compensation in that case. Very little used. That's against Cornwall. Contingency plans. It may be a matter of astonishment, but people's care plans, things change. People don't. December, which nobody could have predicted, or a bank holiday happens on a Friday, what happens? Well, you've got to build that into all care plans, and what the Ombudsman said, you've got to do that with direct payments as well, even if it's difficult to predict. This less for more is happening more and more. The local authority is saying, I know you need 10 hours, and I know you can't afford somebody at £9.50 an hour we're giving you, so you better have 7 hours at 12. Well, that's just completely unlawful. They've got to give you enough to meet your needs. This idea, which increasingly seems to be happening with the families we deal with, is that they can't employ somebody with the appropriate skills at £10 an hour, so they're employing them at £15 an hour, £20 an hour, and therefore having proportionately less. Well, that's not on. As was said in the Liverpool case. Direct payments have got to be increased to £15, £20 an hour if the person needs those skills. The NICE guidance is quite good on this. It's sort of saying direct payment plans must be flexible and able to accommodate changes to a person's priorities, needs and preferences. Councils should agree rolling 3-monthly budget so that people can use the money differently each week. Well, that would be nice. That doesn't seem to be happening. It becomes the system seems to be becoming more and more ossified, more and more rigid. So that's National Institute of Clinical Excellence guidance, which applies in England and Wales. Don't get me going on prepayment cards. I don't know if they're coming in Wales. In England, very many authorities are saying, well, you just get a prepayment card. Quite clearly legal to say you can have a prepayment card, but quite clearly unlawful to say that everybody's got to have one. You clearly have a right to the traditional form of direct payments. And the NICE guidance is very good, I think, and it chimes very much with what Rhian was saying about the idea that local authorities have really got to fund independent brokerages, advice agencies, truly independent, a co-op or a centre for independent living. Increasingly, that seems to be going. Initially, I think it was pretty good, and increasingly, the local authorities are cutting that funding altogether in some cases, or bringing it in-house. And all the research shows that it's got to be independent. It's got to be a disabled person organisation owned and run. And the NICE guidance is, again, very useful on that. There's some really profound problems I'm not going to go into. The independent living grant, which is coming to an end in Wales, we've got a briefing on that on the Rhian site, on the What's New site, and continuing healthcare is a black hole that I will try and avoid. That you can't get direct payments for continuing healthcare in Wales, and I think that that's just got to change. It's changed in England. It wouldn't be many people. I know there's a philosophical objection to it by the Welsh Government, but they're going to have to grow up and get over that one, because it is affecting a few people very, very harshly indeed, who transit from a good direct payment scheme under social care, and then they hit this brick wall of the NHS. We don't do that in Wales. In England, it's no problem. Right. One of the problems, 5 minutes, one of the problems with direct payments is, and this is something that a colleague at Cardiff's doing a wonderful PhD on, is that, that when they emerged, when they got legal traction in the UK, which was in 96, that was sort of, I was going to say neoliberalism at its height, but I suppose neoliberalism at its height is today with this crazy economic system we have. You have the neoliberal government. You had John Major saying, yeah, we want direct payments. Well, personally, I'm not of that side of the legal spectrum. And you think, well, why are these governments wanting to give disabled people something? Because they seem to be, everything else they do is to take it away. And of course, the idea is that there's a lot about direct payments that neoliberal governments like. And so there was this idea, there was this language talked about choice, about independence. Nice Mr. Norman Tebbit said, you know, get on your bike and become independent. But to say people were talking independence, but they didn't mean that. They meant something about good quality services so we could be independent. But independence was a word that was used by both sides, and so was choice. We'll give you choice, a choice between a really lousy service and an even worse service. We're giving you a choice. So, you know, that's what you wanted, that's what you've got. Direct payments is about privatisation, because until very recently in Wales, you couldn't use your direct payment to buy public services. It was about commodification. Instead of having a right to support, you got an entitlement amount of money, which may or may not be enough. So it was converting a right. It's like saying, well, you know, we're going to get rid of the NHS, but we'll give you, if you've got a heart problem, we'll give you 4,000 quid. Well, it may not be enough for a heart operation. Responsibilization, it's the transfer of risk. We used to carry that risk. Now if something's go wrong, well, it's your problem. Don't phone us up, because it's your problem, because you made that choice to have that money. And it came with that huge managerialism, which is the thing that kills social care. This bureaucracy of managers and managers and managers measuring everything. And there's some lovely stuff about, I mean, I'm not a fan of outcomes, sorry. I know they're wonderful things, but there's some really good academic literature now on outcome theology. It's become a appalling mess. And direct payments were seen as cheaper. They could drive down costs because you could force people to employ people rather than go to agencies, because local authorities had to go to agencies or employ people on proper terms and conditions. They drive down costs. You could then use small employer exemptions, so your care assistants could lack those employment rights. And there's all this stuff about social capital and asset-based management. And there's a wonderful critique on that too. We have these just lovely quotes. So we did a survey. We've done a lot of freedom of information requests from local authorities, and we've done a survey of parents about what the gross rates are. And we've been very analytical. We know what the difference between net and gross is. And this is one local authority's response. And what they said is up until March 2017, the standard hourly rate was £10.57. But since 2017, the hourly rate is now £8.71. They cut it by, what is that? You've got the maths, but it's almost £2 an hour. For existing cases, the rate remained at £10.57, but from April it comes down to £9.57. we're going back. They're cutting even these rates. I mean, I think that is scandalous. But what we've found is that the average local authority rate, if you ask the local authority, they say it's £10.57. That's excluding some outliers. If you ask the families, they say it's £8.90. I've asked one of my... you're having somebody from DEWIS doing some talk. DEWIS? Davies, is it? Anyways, my guru expert is something to do with that. And I'm told that as a general rule, anything less than £9.63 an hour would be illegal gross. And my advisor tells me that he thinks that even the £9.63 would be appallingly low, hardly any contingency and little success of attracting applicants, which is very true. If you look at the rates that we've got, that's the graph. Well, a significant proportion of those local authorities are paying less than £9.36 an hour, which is itself appallingly low, but below that's illegal. But it's happening. This is largely, this sample is largely English. The local authority one is completely English. But I don't think it's different in Wales. So the question is, why doesn't the Welsh Government just say you can't pay less than £10 an hour? It's perfectly capable of doing that. Why doesn't the Welsh Government state that it should be increased if you have people with skilled needs? And the answer is because it's not their problem, it's your problem, because we've transferred risk. So we are just bystanders. And the ultimate example of that, and it's going to be where I close, is this case last week. I don't know if you saw it, but it was taken by Mencap, which I think is fascinating. And this was the case that challenged the fact that people who were caring, paid carers, should be paid overnight if they're sleeping in. Just like firemen, you know, if they're waiting for a fire, they're paid. You know, police officers who are on protection duties waiting for a terrorist are paid, even though they're doing nothing. Care workers are the lowest paid group of people in the country. You know, as a category, they are the lowest paid group, largely because they're women, predominantly. That court case said they didn't need, in general, to be paid overnight, which meant that the lowest paid group of people in this country were denied the money they were due, which was estimated to be over £400 million. And Mencap took that case. Maybe not a disabled person-led organisation, but an organisation with a very large number of disabled people in it. And it had to take that case because it would have been financially wiped out. But you're getting disabled people and disabled people's organisations basically doing the government's dirty business in this case. And that is just, you know, we can all see how you get there, but isn't that scandalous? That we use a disabled person, an organisation that includes a very large number of disabled people, to deny the lowest paid group of people in this country something that they clearly legally deserve. But it doesn't have to be that way, brothers and sisters, comrades. And we've got to go back to the circle that Rhian was talking about. We've got to go back to the beginning and rediscover that. It started quite well. The rates were not as bad. It's become rigid. It's become lost. And so we need to go back to that sort of idealism that Swansea lad, John Evans, told us about. But there's another Swansea lad that I would like us to remember, that we mustn't go gentle into that good night. We must rage against what's happened to this system, because it is something that can be fixed, and hopefully today is the beginning of that. So thanks very much.
Diolch, Luke. That was very challenging and very provoking, but also very informative. So thank you so much. Before I open the floor to questions and comments, I just want to remind our viewers watching us online that if you would like to take part, if you've got a comment or question, you do have the opportunity to put that through, I think it's through YouTube. I'm not quite sure how this works, but so do so. And Miranda will pick up your questions so we can put them to Luke. There were a few challenges, I think, thrown out, particularly to Welsh Government. And I just want to say, Welsh Government, we did invite Welsh Government to speak at our event today. Unfortunately, due to other commitments, they weren't able to field anyone. However, don't shoot the messenger. However, they have provided us with a statement, and I just wanted to pick out a couple of salient points. They send their best wishes for a successful day. They remain wholly committed to continuing to progress the rights and entitlements of individuals to live their lives according to the social model of disability. That means enabling and supporting individuals and practitioners to know, understand and access direct payments as part of managing their care and support needs. And they mention the fact that the Minister for Children, Older People and Social Care, Rhian Davies, has recently been seen and heard from individuals who receive direct payments to achieve their outcomes, and also mentions that Social Care Wales have facilitated on their behalf a number of events to better enable practitioners to move from the historic menu of services approach to the outcomes-driven approach, and how direct payments can support that transformation. And this work is supplemented by the Care and Support at Home Action Plan. And then the statement goes on, both the Direct Payment Support Service Network and the All Wales Direct Payments Forum, and there are members of those in this room, provide a space for practitioners to come together to identify and share best practice. Both groups also highlight the need for change and improvement and challenge to the direct payments practice and information exchange, which is facilitated and led by the Welsh Government. And they've asked, the Welsh Government has asked that the outcomes from today's event are included on the agenda for the next meeting scheduled for September and can be used to identify gaps in experience and shape future needs. So there's the opportunity. Okay, so let's open the floor to questions and comments. So we've got Vin, and I'm just looking at Miranda. Is there anything coming through it yet? So we've got Vin. Okay, so start off with Vin. Thank you. And can you wait for the mic? And there's a gentleman there in the stripy top, go next. And then we've got Bill.
Thank you. Is this working? Yeah. Hi, Luke. Good to see you. In passing, Huey Ranker doesn't understand the social model, unfortunately. Is that better? Yes. In passing, Huey Ranker, unfortunately, doesn't understand the social model, but I'm plugging away at that. If I can just throw a couple of points at you, Luke. I don't know whether you're familiar with Albert Heaney's letter to Jonathan Griffiths, which basically instructs local authorities that where somebody has a direct payment and they're moving towards a largely health support need, doing a CHC assessment, then that direct payment should continue at all costs. That's the primary means of delivering support, and the local authority and the health board just have to get over it. One of the things that the Social Services and Wellbeing Act does, certainly the Codes of Practice, is it promotes the employment of family members much more strongly and positively than has been previously done, and it tries to do away with some of the myths. It says that the only time the local authority needs to get involved in the decision is if it's a very close family member, brother, sister, mother, father, husband, living in the same household. Apart from that, any other family member should be naturally considered as eligible to be employed as a PA. One more there. Under the right circumstances, direct payments, employing a PA directly is so much better than going through an agency, because you can train people on the job. You can take people who don't come with all the baggage of working for an agency or social services and train them to do exactly what you want, when you want, where you want.
The other two as well. So the gentleman in the stripy shirt, thank you. Can I just see, are there any other hands? The lady, okay, there's two, okay.
My wife's looking to set up a service in actually in Swansea, as it happens. Now, the local council actually do provide a similar service, which actually, as it happens, is more expensive, and it's sort of a jack of all trades, but doesn't really meet the benefits to the members that it is. Now, there's going to be some resistance, as into basically they want to take them out of the local government services and look to use my wife's provision, and obviously they want to keep the direct payments effectively in-house so it stays within local government. What's the best way to challenge that when you go to local government and say, look, I'm providing this service, it's cheaper, and actually not only is it cheaper, but it is more effective, and the people that will be using this service will benefit more from it?
Vin, I can't dare disagree with anything he says, so that's dealt with straight away. Yours is a fairly difficult, sort of almost a quasi-commercial question, which normally I'd say I'll speak to you afterwards. But the point is that direct payments is about choice. People should have choice. Generally, local authorities would prefer people chose the cheapest option. I mean, that's a sort of quasi-commercial question I can't really answer here. In theory, the local authority should add you to the menu of providers, and if they don't, they would have to give a very good legal reason, because otherwise it would be a restrictive practice. They're in a dominant position. Okay, is that right?
Yeah.
We've got Bill, and then there are there's the lady behind Bill, and then there's another lady there on the next table. Are there any other burning questions or points? So we've got Nathan, and there's two more, and I think we'll probably have, and Nita, okay, and then I think because I'm aware we've also got three other fabulous presentations. That's okay. So we start with Bill, okay?
Yeah, is it live? Yeah. First and foremost, let me say that direct payments being cried out for was in the 80s inclusively. Yeah, I can tell you that now. We cried out for it in the 80s as part of the access group in Wiltshire. Okay? They didn't take any notice then, and today even, right, very rarely are they taking any notice. A major barrier with direct payments is devolution. It's not our responsibility at the Senate, it's whatever authority you're under. They're the ones. They're then blaming the other lot. So we are left in the middle, nowhere to go. The thing about the amounts of money that you get, I have been a victim of requesting items such as an intercom system to my house, because I've had people banging on my door and I can't hear them. Right? A couple of whom have died, unfortunately. Now, when I had the OT come out, they went on board with the, the DLA lock. I can buy a system out of the DLA. I'm on minimal DLA, right? Out of £21 a week, I'm supposed to pay for a full intercom system. Give me a break, right? Now, I've got a number of things coming through, so...
Obviously, there are other people.
I understand. I do understand that.
What's your main point, your main question?
My main issue is that when you're talking about services and provision of the services, the organisations that you were referring to, there are major groups out there that have been fighting tooth and nail to try and provide services for people in their communities. right? The thing is that once they start opening their mouths, as we say, all the funding gets cut. Why? We're too effective.
Thanks, Bill. And if we go to the lady behind, and then I feel like David Dimbleby. And then I've also...
Hello, thank you, Luke, for the presentation. It was really inspiring. My question is, I think this case that MenCap has taken has kind of blown a hole through the whole voluntary sector and also the private sector. This is likely to come back, in my opinion, and I'm just wondering what you think. Will there be an appeal? Is this likely to be won in time in terms of those who are entitled or maybe require the funding for sleep-ins?
The overnight, the MenCap case may well be appealed. It's a Court of Appeal decision. Unison may appeal that. I think we probably know the outcome of the decision. I think everything's going to get fine. I think everything's going to be all right. If you on my website, you've got the introduction to my big book, and it dates social care back to 1531 and the abolition of the monasteries. And it's just swings, the pendulum swings. I think we are at the very end of a very unpleasant swing, and everything's going to be right. The trouble is I've been saying that for about 5 years, and people keep reminding me that I've said it before. But it can't, I think we've got to have some sanity, you know, that we daily look at the news and we see insane people in power, and we experience insane policies in our lives. Sooner or later, it will come back. Direct payments is such a brilliant idea. The provision of social care is almost at the top of the political agenda. So I think that we should hope.
So there's a lady in the next table. I know we've got Nathan and Anita, and there was a gentleman here. And also, very excitingly, we've got somebody online. So, okay, so...
Hello, my name's Jane Goodrick. I'm here as a citizen of Wales, but I also represent the Carers Advisory Panel for Dementia Carers Count, the National Resource Centre for carers, specifically of people with dementia. Of the 147,000 people in Wales that potentially can receive direct payments, and only the 5,800 that are, we are probably one of those figures, even though we've received nothing. We've received one payment, which was November 2016, and we've received nothing since. And some of the barriers that we find, particularly with people with dementia, in accessing direct payments, where they don't have a significant other to do it for them, is that the barriers are the gatekeepers of the social worker. So the government have provided the legislation, the people want the legislation, but we've got that barrier in between, despite the workshops that you mentioned before. We happen to know how to circumvent that barrier by going to the people on top and breaking that barrier down. How can we, the rest of the 135,000 people, find out how to break down that barrier of the gatekeeper, stopping us accessing what is ours by right?
You can do that if you've got a sister who's a barrister, basically, and if you don't, you're stuffed. And that's what a lot of our work is about, trying to sort of produce materials that show how people that don't have those connections, who are willing to write to the person at the top. It is very difficult, and we've therefore got to have the rules changed. That's why the guidance, proper guidance from the Welsh Government would be so useful, to say, look, you shouldn't be so obsessed with recording outcomes and measuring outcomes and all that sort of stuff. I have a huge amount of time for social workers. I know that lots of people have had bad experiences, but as a group of people, I think they're one of the greatest professions I come across. And I come across a lot of professions and a lot of lawyers, and I put social workers are up there. They may be putting up barriers, but those barriers have been put in place because they've been told to play those games. And so you may be going to somebody at the top saying, oh, this is awful, but that person at the top may be the very person that told the social worker to do what she or he was doing. So, I appreciate that they're following orders and things like that, but we've just got to change the system, and that really needs to come from the Welsh Government. You know, stop this nonsense about measuring everything. It's the bureaucracy. I mean, the curious thing about neoliberalism is that it manufactures bureaucracy, which you think it wouldn't, because they talk about red tape, but in fact it proliferates.
Thank you. We've got the gentleman that's here in the white shirt, and then we'll go to Nathan, then Anita, and then our person online. And I think, I'm afraid that we'll have to move on then.
Hi, many thanks. I really enjoyed your presentation. I manage a team of social work staff in Carmarthenshire. And one of the biggest problems that we've got is that obviously every direct payment case is individual. And you have to take a lot of things into consideration. But I know the social workers often get in disputes with families. And the issue is, if a husband is claiming direct payments for his wife, for example, it's where his duties as a husband finish and where the direct payment sort of kicks in. Because we have a couple of cases at the moment where husbands are trying to get payment for every time they take their wife out and sort of, you know, sort of things like that as part of their social sort of. And we're often in dispute with those families. And it's a very, very grey area. And we're conscious that we don't want to sell people short by not giving them that money, but we don't want to be giving them money as well if that is something that they should be doing as a husband. And so it's very, very difficult and quite complex.
I mean, I think that a case like that might be slightly difficult. I can't say it's that difficult. The majority of problems I think people are talking about is not being paid to take your wife out. We've mentioned John Evans and we've mentioned Dylan Thomas. We could remember Aneurin Bevan, because Aneurin Bevan did enact the National Assistance Act, which did come into force on the same day as the NHS Act. And the National Assistance Act simply said the poor law is abolished. And he abolished the poor law because he had experiences of that awful system. And we should get on our knees and thank him for that. And when we abolished the poor law, we abolished the liable family rule. You know, there are no duties on husbands and wives to look after each other. There are in much of Europe, but there aren't in this country. The only duty you have, if you're mad enough to get wed, which I have done more than once, is to financially support. But you do not have to care for your partner in this country. It isn't your duty to do that. That was under the poor law system, the workhouse and things like that. There were family responsibilities. So, you know, if the greatest problem you have is working that out, then you, I think, are blessed in Carmarthen. I know it's difficult. Nathan, yeah, talking about difficulties.
Just quickly, just want to say that you mentioned that the Welsh Independent Living Grant was getting phased out. Well, if I've got anything to do with it, it won't be. So I've still got a few avenues to go down to fight that. And I wondered also if I could speak to you off camera after, you know, because there's some issues relating to my specific case that I'd like to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, just to say how inspiring your campaign is, and you know, we've put some material on Rhian, and it isn't inevitable, and I hope, you know, that it doesn't close, because it was a great idea, and it was to compensate. You know, I mean, if anybody knows the history of the Independent Living Fund will know that it isn't, you know, some special pleading. It was because supplementary benefit, when it was phased out, 2 million disabled people lost out, and several thousand of them lost out big time. And now they're sort of hoping that most people will have forgotten about that injustice. So, but I'm going to have to leave the room after this talk, but if you want to come outside and have a chat, that would be lovely. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
to Anita, who's in the red top, and then finally our online with Miranda.
Hi, I'm Anita Davies and I work for a charity who supports people with sight loss or dual sensory loss. And I do feel that this group of people are actually, the direct payment system is quite a frustrating system for them, because you mentioned earlier you can use direct payments to get equipment. But in most of the people that we've referred in to have direct payments assessment, either for hours or for equipment, we're finding that they're coming back and saying to us, well, I can't afford the hours that they've, the money that they're charging us, rather, not the hours, but the money that they say we're going to have to pay. But the equipment side of it is actually not going through. It's not being encouraged. And on the equipment side, a person may have a specialist assessment done to actually recommend pieces of equipment, which could help sustain their independence by giving them aids to help them manage their correspondence or to help them navigate and get out and about. But those aspects are not actually being assessed through the direct payment system or offered, and I'm not sure if that's down to lack of awareness with the people doing those systems. But if you put a referral in saying, I recommend this person could have look at direct payments to help support them in buying these pieces of equipment to help their independence, to keep them independent at home, like I said, in managing correspondence, getting out and about. I've got somebody at the moment who's got very complex needs, who's got sight loss, but actually trying to get that support, maybe through direct payments in relation to equipment, I'm a bit sceptical about, because I haven't come across anybody really that's been successful in that way. And that's an area that does concern me. And the other part of the question I had, which the lady, a lady in the room a couple of questions ago asked, which was about how do we kind of challenge that? You've kind of already answered. And so, which was a bit like, oh, no, so how do we support these people?
We produced a toolkit on accessing social care rights. So you go to my website, you go to the Cerebra site, you've got a toolkit. It's got the 9 commonly occurring problems. It's not us, it's them. We don't do this. It's a bit awkward. The panel said no. Those sort of silly things that are said. And we've got standard letters there. And so that would help you. I mean, one of the problems with equipment is that the guidance isn't very good on that. There needs to be good guidance that says, what the old guidance said was that direct payments can be used for all social care, including equipment, unless this is something that you could be the subject of a disabled facilities grant, and sort of what you're talking about couldn't be. So local authorities have basically, in a way, forgotten that direct payments are for, putting it nicely, for equipment, and you would then need to make a formal complaint and ask them to give a reason why that wouldn't be. And we've got in the toolkit standard complaints letters, which are touchy-feely nice ones that don't upset anybody, but we're just making a formal complaint because you've got this wrong. Clearly, equipment can be transformative, particularly in sensory impairment, and I've not come across situations like that, probably because people don't think of asking for direct payment for it.
I think it's quite new, but my son's a wheelchair user. He can get his wheelchair through the wheelchair service. Yeah. I'm visually impaired, but there is no, other than access to work, if I work, or through education, there is no other system in place other than direct payments that I might be able to get a speech scanner to help me read my mail. Yeah. Unless I went to charity funding, and that's not always, that doesn't work for everyone. So direct payments is the only other route that somebody who can't afford £3,000 for a speech scanner could actually go around get it. But then, of course, that person has to have a specialised assessment, so that requires them to have a specialist worker with sensory impairment, maybe within either social services or within the third sector that could be employed to do that assessment, and then going forward to direct. But those dots, in my view, don't appear to be joined up at this moment in time.
Really good point, and thank you.
Okay, Miranda, who have we got online?
Just to say, we've got up to 18 people watching.
Oh my God, way!
Which is great. A message from Graham Finley. Hi, Rhian, Luke and friends. If we want to reinvigorate the direct payments agenda, how do we do this? should we focus on renewing the once radical ideas of independence and choice and control? Question.
Question, isn't it? Yes, of course. I think we've got to... I think the twin evils are the appallingly low rates, and they don't save money because people then end up in residential care or looked after as children. They're economically illiterate. And we've got to get rid of the bureaucracy, you know. There used to be an old thing, you would trust somebody. You know, why don't you just give them the money? And if then evidence comes to light that they're not trustworthy, challenge it. But the amount of money that's spent on measuring these things is out of all proportion to the 5,000 people that are getting it. I'm sure it's 3 or 4 times the cost. And that's being done by social workers because they've been told they've got to do it. This is public money. We've got to account for every penny. That sort of discourse. That's a great question. Thank you.
Luke, Joanne, Rhian, thank you so much for being with us this morning, giving us all a challenge, giving us all a boost, and brilliant. Thank you very much. I think I'm going to rip up the agenda, but if I could invite DEWIS CIL, Mary and Dan to join me, and then we're also going to be hearing from Joanne Bartlett from Welsh Cooperative Centre, and then finally Jeff, last but not least, Jeff Bratton-Wilson from Social Care Wales. So, okay, so welcome to Mary and Dan from DEWIS Centre for Independent Living, who are going to talk to us about the role of a direct payment support scheme. So, Joe, Crystal. Yeah. There you are. Very colourful presentation.
Like a bit of colour after Luke's black. I'm Mary, I'm the CEO for... Sorry. I'm Mary, I'm the CEO for DEWIS. I'm aware that a lot of you in this room probably know Steve Harris, who's retired quite recently. I'm not trying to fill his boots before you ask me, because it's impossible. We're here today to talk to you a little bit about the work that we do as a direct payment support organisation. And this is my colleague Dan. He manages the direct payment service in Cardiff. Okay, so DEWIS CIL, or Centre for Independent Living, we're a voluntary organisation, which means basically we try to employ, if you like, the social model of disability in everything that we do. We have 2 sort of key pillars, really, of our work. One of them is a direct payment support service, and the other one is advocacy. I've tried to outline there for you where we have contracted services. Generally, our services are contracted to local authorities or health boards. In terms of direct payments, we deliver the services in RCT, the Vale of Glamorgan, Merthyr and Cardiff currently. And we have contracted advocacy services in RCT, Newport, Conway, Denbighshire, Wrexham, Pembrokeshire and Gwent as a health board service. You can see on the... Oh, go back a bit. So you can see on the side there, I've tried to give you a little map of Wales where we're actually currently working. If you look at the red dots, they are authorities or health boards where we have contracts to deliver services. And the little buildings you can see on that map is where we have offices in Wales.
So just to give you a brief background about DEWIS. You don't see it too well? Can we do anything about the lights? If I continue, and then maybe someone can work on the lights. Okay, so in 1996, a group of disabled people were encouraged to start a small company to manage their own care and support arrangements. I think you can see in the picture there that group of lovely people, which some of you may know. In 2001, they adopted the name Centre for Independent Living, and this would then go on to become known as DEWIS Centre for Independent Living. They wanted to model the organisation along the lines of Centres for Independent Living in England and in other countries. DEWIS was originally conceived as a disabled people's organisation, with disabled people involved in the running and managing of the organisation, and it still is to this day. It would have a positive approach to employing disabled people. Currently in DEWIS, 35% of the staff are disabled people, and many of those are direct payment users as well. And it will provide services which promote independent living for disabled people. And we'll come on to what those, some of those services are in a bit.
So Luke talked a little bit about CIL, Centres for Independent Living, and how they can sort of support the delivery of a support service for direct payments to increase uptake and you know, foster confidence among people to actually employ their own care staff. We are a disabled people's user-led organisation, a DPULO, DPLO. I want to say DPLO, but that's my child's playthings. So essentially what we are is we are a grassroots organisation. We are based on the idea that user-led means what it says. So the services, the policies, the methods that we use in our work is designed and controlled by those who would use the services themselves. It means involvement of those who have the most earnest desire to get things right, and that is disabled people themselves. And DPULOs have various names, the most common of them being a Centre for Independent Living. Obviously, there are also co-ops, and I know there's going to be a talk on that later on, which are, again, very user-led and user-directed. So in our organisation, our trustees are, it's an integrated committee of disabled people and others, generally family members of people who have some experience of using the services that our organisation delivers.
So I just noticed we got a clicker here. Does it work?
It does work.
Yay, there we go. Okay, so what advantages of having a DPULO? What sort of added value can that bring? So some of those will be local people employed entirely, the local economy being strengthened as a result of that, having a local premises and businesses central in the community, local knowledge, local support, which is useful for signposting to local organisations and having that local knowledge in-house, willingness to develop new initiatives, which then go on to benefit the wider community, and the money involved in such projects remain within the Welsh community.
So in terms of the services that we provide, as I've mentioned very briefly, we have sort of three pillars to our work, which is a direct payment support service with an associated payroll service, and then also advocacy, which has come to the fore a lot with the Social Services and Wellbeing Act. So as an organisation, we deliver direct payment support services and guidance to disabled people and their families, usually via contracts. We have a recruitment service for personal assistance. We support disabled people to be employers of their personal assistants. We have a payroll administration service for around 1,500 disabled people currently. We deliver advocacy services, including independent advocacy, citizen advocacy, group and self-advocacy, as well as peer advocacy. And we facilitate peer support groups for direct payments users and advocacy users and generally disabled people as a CIL. And we also have a trading arm called DEWIS Independent Services, which I'll talk a little bit more about later.
Okay, so further on to that, the direct payments support scheme, which I'm sure all of you are aware, or most of you are aware of, but I'll give you a brief overview of the sort of service we offer to individuals and the typical course of the direct payment support. So we'll visit potential users of the scheme and give information, answer any questions, give reassurances, because, you know, telling people they're going to be an employer out of the blue sometimes, you know, scares the living daylights out of people. So it's giving that reassurance, you know, that they will be able to do it with or without our support. Giving the support to find personal assistance, so that will involve drafting job descriptions, advertising, supporting people with interviews. We've got a PA notice board where people can go and see little pen pictures of existing PAs in the area, and helping them with things like contracts of employment, etc. We have a payroll service, so they'll run the wages and do the nasty stuff to do with the HMRC, which nobody enjoys, and they'll obviously do that on that individual's behalf. We've also got a managed account service, so those individuals who may find it difficult to manage paperwork, we can do that on their behalf. And then once everything is all set up and running, then they've got the ongoing support and advice of DEWIS and a dedicated direct payments advisor then, who's at the end of the phone. We'll go out and visit them with any issues at all they want to discuss. We're always there. Also to provide training to personal assistants, things like manual handling, first aid if it's required. And again, one of the big jobs of direct payments advisors is to go out and promote direct payments when we can. Okay, so running a sports scheme isn't without its challenges. As Luke said, there's lots of challenges to getting direct payments out there and for getting it to be a correct fit to individuals. So some of the challenges we face as an organisation will include the low uptake in areas such as mental health and older people, which I think was touched on before. Complex processes, so Luke said about bureaucracy, then, you know, that's, and that results, we believe, in low referral levels. So it's really about working closely with local authorities to streamline those processes and promote direct payments as much as we can. The Social Services and Wellbeing Act could be realised more fully, as again Luke touched on before. So it's really aiming for that joined-up approach rather than the top-down traditional model, which we've seen. And people's confidence in taking up direct payments, it's about challenging that misinformation, those doubts that people have about whether or not they can be a successful employer. You know, it's our job to go out there and try and give them as much support as they need to make them confident to take that on. Promoting direct payments in minority, ethnic and other marginalised groups. Myth busting, so going out there, again, out in the community, promoting direct payments as much as we can and answering all those questions and doubts that people have. And finally, competitive commissioning.
Okay, so in terms of what we are trying to develop to enable more people to use direct payments, to broaden our horizons a bit in terms of how we deliver a support service, we have started doing some more added value things that we don't actually get paid for as such, but as an organisation for disabled people, led by disabled people, they are things that the trustees of our organisation want us to do as a centre for independent living. So one of them is we've been involved in a scheme to deliver a level 3 qualification in health and social care for personal assistants in conjunction with our city council. So our staff deliver a lot of the training around the QCF qualification. And as a result, the PA is hoped is kind of seen as more of an integrated part of the care workforce, as they have in the past been seen sort of as a little bit separate. He also gives them skills and a recognisable qualification which is transferable. So we feel that's really worthwhile. I mentioned earlier about DEWIS Independent Services, it's our trading arm, and we've set that up. It's wholly owned by the charity and also therefore essentially user-led. We've registered with the Care Inspectorate for Wales, the idea being that in time we will employ PAs to deliver short-term and emergency personal assistance for people who might need it on a very short-term basis then. So if you had if you regularly use direct payments, you might at one point have a PA who quits, perhaps. You can then come to us and say, I would like to employ, have you got someone in your bank of PAs who we know are trained to a reasonable standard? We know what we're getting from you because you are essentially a user-led organisation. We have an involvement in what you deliver. Can you help me for a short period of time? It would allow, we hope, people to carry on with their direct payments until they find a more workable long-term solution. So that's the idea of our trading arm. We are looking at setting up a lot more peer support groups for direct payment users or citizens for them to share best practice, share ideas, and as a result of that, we have started some discussions around pooling of direct payment resources and also very early in developing co-ops among direct payment users who we're currently working with. We have the ability to develop a suitable persons service, which may perhaps increase the uptake of direct payments. And we're also looking at different and more extended financial services, such as appointeeships and financial management for people in residential care, perhaps, or in circumstances where they may not be able to manage their own finances. We could become involved in that to enable their independence further. So not directly linked to direct payments necessarily, but all part of the whole aim of it, which is independent living. In terms of the future, we have suggested some things we think perhaps will be important going forward in relation to direct payments. We think developing the local support resources in the community, such as peer support, utilise local resources and talent, collective resources perhaps, like a pooling idea, because it will provide a citizen-focused service and innovation. So it will be a sort of run by the people for the people. It's a potential idea. Maybe co-production improvements of resources provided by statutory bodies, improve advice and information provision for independent living options, promoting personal assistant roles and opportunities as desirable careers, develop personal assistant banks and collective arrangements, or innovate to maximise job security and conditions. And obviously the pay is a really key part of that, which we have no control over as a support organisation, but we have got links to local authorities and can have dialogues with them based on what our members want us to do. And also increase the numbers of people or families achieving independent living through direct payments.
Okay, so just before we end then, I'd like to play a short 3-minute video, and it's one of our service users, Paul, and he gives us a brief discussion about his experience using direct payments and mentions the support of DEWIS as well. So this is where it all goes wrong. Bear with me.
Thank you, Paul, for agreeing to be interviewed today. I've jotted down some questions and I wanted to ask you about your journey of having direct payments. So can you just tell me how long you've had direct payments for, please?
I've had direct payments for around about 10 years. Previous to that, I was on the old third party. I was encouraged to go on direct payments because DEWIS said that it would allow me to organise my care more independently.
So what do you use your PAs for?
I use my PAs for personal care and anything and everything which allows me to be independent within the house and within the wider community.
So how did you go about finding your PAs?
It was through an accumulation really of finding my own PAs, but also through the help of DEWIS as well. With my advisor, he helped me set up the job description, advertised it, and ensuring that everything which I required was put on there.
Once the PA is in place, we hope everything runs smoothly. Has this always been the case for you?
Generally it is, but there are certain times when it doesn't. Like one particular case, an employee of mine, you know, just sickness was a little bit high, and it was sort of a way to treat it, you know, which I knew I had to tread carefully. Now, I did have assistance from DEWIS in order certain procedures which I had to put in place, but fortunately it didn't have to go that far, and it was all done very amicably. And but still, that gave me the confidence to actually deal with the situation myself.
Thanks, Paul, for answering all those questions. Do you have anything that you'd like to say in closing?
Well, you know, I think, you know, direct payments as a whole, you know, is a fantastic thing, you know, which allows me to be independent and to, you know, to do my care, to live my life as and when and how I want to do it. But also, you know, with DEWIS as well, having that support on hand, certainly gives me the confidence to do that and to employ my own employees. We've kept up to date with a number of things, such as, you know, certain, to do it and use it if I want to.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For listening. I don't know if we're doing questions, Rhian, but we are around if you want to come and talk to us.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really comprehensive outline of, you know, an example of a centre for independent living. We're going to make some adjustments around lunch because I am aware we're running late, but very pleased to welcome our partner in Citizen Directed Co-operatives Cymru, Jo from Wales Co-operative Centre, the Care to Cooperate project.
Thank you.
Jo. Call Miranda.
Hello, my name's Joanne Bartlett. I'm employed by the Wales Co-Operative Centre. The Wales Co-Operative Centre is a not-for-profit cooperative development agency based in Wales. It's the largest cooperative development body in the UK, and since its inception, it's helped over 1,000 social businesses across Wales develop. The centre was established in 1982 by the Wales TUC to provide business support to cooperatives in Wales. We believe that how we do things is just as important as what we do. The cooperative is run by a board of 12 elected members whose aim is for Wales to be the leader for cooperative thinking and action. So I'm one of 2 advisors employed on the Care to Cooperate project. I cover South Wales, my colleague Gareth covers North Wales. Care to Cooperate was established to lead the way in making the policy drivers of co-design and co-delivery a local reality in social care and wellbeing in Wales. The project supports the empowerment of service users, carers, family members and paid staff to work cooperatively to develop, design and deliver improved social care and wellbeing services. We work with local authorities, health boards, commissioners and existing third sector providers to improve the cooperation and improve the delivery of community-based services. We support transformation. One of our biggest transformations has been Cartrefi Cymru, which is now a cooperative business, and improve the delivery of community-based services. We achieve this by providing business support for emerging and new start cooperatives and social enterprises that deliver social care and wellbeing services. We've also developed some online tools, which I'm going to show you a bit later, and I've got some promotional information if everybody wants to take away the link to our website. So we work with the 7 principles of cooperatives. So within a cooperative business or cooperative partnership, anyone can join, everyone has an equal vote, every member has a say in how money is used, no one except the members can make decisions, we help each other to learn, gain new skills, share skills and find out information. And cooperatives help each other, so we call it the strawberry patch approach, where one cooperative develops and then is there to help other developments across Wales. And ultimately, we care about the community. So within our project, we look at ways that cooperative partnerships can be set up, and they can be set up using direct payments. So direct payment recipients can form a cooperative, pool their money and employ PAs through the cooperative business. PAs can form a cooperative that provides wellbeing activities as well as traditional domiciliary care services. So one of the cooperatives that may have been spoken about earlier was Moncare. And the way that we support any cooperative development, we try to make it as simple as possible because it can be quite complicated. So we've developed our road to cooperation. And with the Moncare board, we've supported them through the road to cooperation, and the process helps the founder members, so those with the idea in the beginning that come together and decide that they want to make a difference, they want to take control and they want to do something for themselves. We support those people to understand their roles and responsibilities, decide on the structure that they want to choose, develop their business plan, and understand how they're going to involve their members every step of the way. So we're not talking about just consulting with them manually, going out with a survey now and again and asking questions. We're talking about true involvement and decision-making and control of citizens. So the cooperative approach means that members are involved in the decision-making, they're involved at the annual general meeting, and they have an opportunity to join the board. So many people in Wales receive direct payments to employ PA assistants, and PAs help citizens with activities in their own home and out in the local community. Some people use private agencies to manage their PAs, and this can sometimes lead to people not knowing who will visit their home, and sometimes a difference in the quality of support they receive in accordance to who attends their home that day. It's for this reason that many people may choose to manage their own personal assistants. However, this involves a lot of administration, and it can often be hard to find available PAs to employ or find a replacement when a PA leaves when you need cover for holidays and when you need cover for sickness. This is why the cooperative approach is better. In 2016, our Care to Cooperate service began working with two parents. They wanted to turn their private home care arrangements for their adult child into a cooperative. The home care is arranged by employing a team of PAs and is paid for using direct payments. The parents were concerned about their adult child's future if they were no longer able to manage the team of PAs. And what was happening in this circumstance is that the two parents were quite aging and had their own health problems. Inevitably, they weren't going to be here forever, and they wanted to ensure that their child would continue to have a voice and continue to have control over the kind of care she was in receipt of. So with the help of our project, Care to Cooperate, the service began working with the two parents to help them form a cooperative business. They wanted a long-term plan in place, and they wanted to maintain the supportive culture that had built up with their small team of PAs. So Care to Cooperate worked with the parents to form a multi-stakeholder cooperative with different types of member categories. So we had the citizen members, the person being supported to live independently. We had the worker members, which were the PAs themselves. And we had supporter members, which were close family and friends. And we brought all these people together, and they agreed that working as a cooperative would be the best approach for everybody involved. The PAs knew that what kind of work they would be doing every day, who they would be working with. They got to know the young person. They knew what music she liked, what hobbies she had, when she had a bad day, when she had a good day. So PAs had consistency in their employment. The family knew there was consistency with the PAs that were employed, and everybody was happier with this approach. So the cooperative formed. We helped them with their business plan, we helped them form their memorandum and articles, we helped them structure themselves into a board, and everybody sits around the table together, including the person concerned, and everybody makes decisions together. The young person concerned told me that before she joined the cooperative, she got very angry, she got very frustrated. She felt that people were talking about her. She felt she wasn't included. This approach meant that she was included. She had to be included because that's the rules of a cooperative. And that everybody had to find a way to understand what she wanted to contribute to the meeting. So when you bring one or more citizen who's entitled to direct payments together in a cooperative setting, there's the possibility of pooling your funds. And pooling funds can be spent on a range of things, and it's up to you to decide how the available funding would be best spent. It means that 2 or 3 people come together. We know it's complicated. We know that different people have different entitlements to funding and different needs. But it can work. And when it works, it goes well. So if you were to consider coming together with others, with like-minded interests, hobbies, maybe you're a Cardiff City football fan, maybe you like the same music and want to go to concerts, things like this, you could pool your funds. The idea around this is if you've got 3 people in a cooperative and they all want to go to one event, do they really need to employ 3 PAs? Or if they pool their money, can they employ 2 PAs? Do they all need separate transport? At the minute, if they're going independently, they're each paying for transport. If they pool their money, they could have 1 taxi, they could have 1 minibus, they could have 2 PAs instead of 3 PAs. They're maximising resources. We do have to remember that when pooling funds, you still need to be able to show that your agreed needs and the needs of the people you are pooling with are being met effectively. So again, on this slide, I've talked about the opportunities from pooling direct payments, cooperative employing being the employer, cooperative members supporting each other, members experiencing greater well-being because their decision-making, they're getting more active, their well-being is increasing, they've got more options, and they've got people that they're chatting with and making decisions together with. So, slide 8, right. Again, the idea around this is things like attending leisure activities, hiring a venue to hold a social group, or hiring transport to get to a venue, setting up a social group, setting up a small enterprise yourselves, everything's possible, setting up shared opportunities and hiring PAs. I'm making it sound quite simple, and it is simple when you work with us because we'll try to make everything easy for you to understand. We won't talk in jargon, we'll talk in a language that everybody understands around the table and everybody has involvement and has their say. So I've just put some clouds together of things that we know we need to think about, and I'm not saying that everything's easy, I'm just saying it is possible. So we need to think about accessibility. We need to think about where we're holding the meetings. We need to make sure everybody can get there. And if they can't get there, how are we going to involve them? We need to think about the skills and abilities of people around the table. It's quite useful if you've got friends, neighbours, or somebody who's just interested in keeping the financial records, or doing a bit of note-taking, making some phone calls on your behalf. Different people can join the cooperative for different reasons, so don't think that everybody has to have the same aims and objectives when they're becoming part of the cooperative. We need to think about governance, that's a frightening word. We need to think about due diligence. We need to think about record keeping, employment, the law, rights and responsibilities and duties as an employer. If you're doing it on your own, that's quite frightening. If you're doing it as a cooperative, you can talk to others, you can seek advice, you can put your heads together and come out with better ways of doing things. Not one person is taking on the entire responsibility of being the employer and dealing with the direct payments. We need to make sure we've got time to listen, to involve everyone equally. We need to make sure we use the right language and is jargon-free. We need to be conscious of strategic terminology. And it's important that information is put across in a way that people understand. If people understand what they're part of, then they can participate without fear and without feeling uncomfortable and thinking that, just keeping it in and not understanding exactly what's going on. Digital technology is useful, Skype is useful, but I have been given reasons why Skype is not so useful. One example was a parent who had a child with learning difficulties, and she felt that even though she couldn't make it to a meeting, if she was going to Skype in, then her child might behave inappropriately in the background, and she didn't want that to be seen. So even though digital technology is out there and is useful, Cerebra is the answer. But when we do it, and when we get it right, good things can happen. And studies have proven that joint decision-making and co-production are associated with beneficial changes to levels of well-being. Depression, sense of community, isolation, because if people are working together in a cooperative, they just have a role to play in a group of people. They're talking to others. They have a reason to communicate. So there's lots of benefits to it, and like I said, studies have shown that that is the way. So one of our members of a cooperative that was developed in North Wales came out with this statement, and I think this says it all in a nutshell. He said, "I believe in the power of getting people together." He said, "I can feel the vulnerability of old age in this country, the cost of services, getting older, and worrying if I can afford what I need. But despite that vulnerability, through the cooperative, I can do something about it." So this is about the citizen taking control. In order to help you with all this, we have online tools Again, they're jargon-free, easy to understand. We have summaries of the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, so you can look at that in your own time, look at what your rights are, look at what's possible. We've got a social media guide, so if you wanted to promote the opportunity for others to join your cooperative, we've got some rules and regulations around that. We've got a membership guide which talks a bit further about some of the things I've talked about today, how to be inclusive, how to involve people, how to make sure that everybody feels like they're playing a part, they're being listened to. And lots of other general resources that you can find on that link there. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanne. Again, another really comprehensive outline of the work of Care to Cooperate, and just so exciting what's possible. You know, the opportunities are there and the support is there. So, Joanne, you're around for the rest of the day.
I am.
So grab Joanne, and I should be really happy to have a chat with you. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Joanne. And last but not least, we have Jeff Bratton-Wilson from Social Care Wales. In case you're confused, yes, Jeff did used to work for Disability Wales as a development officer of the CDCC project, but he's here. We've heard a lot about social workers and the workforce. Jeff's here to talk about the education and hopefully show what can be, how things can be progressed. Thank you, Jeff.
Hi, I just want to check everybody can hear me. Right, okay, so I'm the last speaker for this morning, so there's a massive amount of pressure on me. Just to make sure that I finish early so you lot have enough time for lunch. So, right, okay, so I'm from Social Care Wales, and I'm here to talk about how we can engage with the workforce to get the message out there with regards to direct payment. My presentation is going to alternate between Welsh slides and English slides. So there'll be a little bit of a Welsh slide and then a little bit of an English slide. But thank you ever so much for Disability Wales for inviting me here today to give this presentation. Okay, we at Social Care Wales have different national groups. We have the Welsh Government Direct Payments Information Exchange Group, which have members of different local authorities, Social Care Wales. We share good practice, experiences, sometimes not necessarily some things that are good, but you know, we do try and learn from the mistakes and improve. We've got the All Wales Direct Payments Forum and the Direct Payment Support Services Network as well. So we are aware of other organisations out there, but we want to make sure that we can support the sector as much as we can. Okay, so I'd like to talk about how Social Care Wales then, how can we promote and support the use of direct payment within Wales? We've organised 12 learning events for the social care sector, and Disability Wales was involved in that and part of the cooperative as well. We've done different surveys, and of course, you know, we've had a look at MonCare and the MonCare project, and you know what we can learn from MonCare to spread out that information into the workforce and make sure that it's done on a regular basis. And obviously having that What Matters conversation, the What Matters programme as part of the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, you know, it talks about what matters conversation to the individuals that are being assessed, and you know, it's getting that awareness of that conversation out there. You know, promoting via different groups,
and having more online available resources. Because at the moment there's some resources there, and you've got the hub as part of Social Care Wales website. There's lots of different resources there that are free. You don't have to pay for them. So we're just sort of keeping going, but we do have a plan that I'll share briefly about what we would like to do. I don't know if any of you are aware of it. We have the Care and Supported Home Strategy, which is a 5-year strategy. And that actually looks into, people staying at home longer. I'm not sure if you can see it too well because of the lights on the board, but, the direct payments are in all 3 of those sections that are up on the presentation. So really, we want to make sure that direct payments and the knowledge is out there. We want to make sure that we're sharing experiences and things like that. And obviously, we do identify barriers, and we are thinking about how we can work with the workforce in order to gain those solutions so that the uptake of direct payments is increasing. I'm just going to briefly explain about, the shared learning events that we put on. And this is some statistics. Especially Friday before lunch, I absolutely adore statistics. Okay, so in 2017 to 2018, we held 12 events, and Disability Wales were involved in most of those. And we actually had 226 participants attend. And it basically looked at creative learning, and it was a focus on workshop for cooperatives, and thinking about differences and how we can do things differently and not keep to the traditional ways of doing things. So you can see what was involved. We had direct payment, individuals, carers, managers, social workers, commissioners, direct payment, social support services, regional services. So the message is getting out there, and all the events were well attended. I think at one point we actually had a waiting list, which we had to keep extending because the 12 events were so popular. I'm not sure what was better. It might have been the training or the lunch. I'm pretty sure it was the training, though. That was the best bit. So the themes that we've actually identified through the different events. Obviously, it was well attended, like I said, but it showed that actually people are keen, the workforce are keen in learning about different ways to go about things. And we actually identified that we actually really need to change and make sure that we have that leadership, and it's the leaders that adopt that change in order to influence their workforce to change. So the themes that we came across, trying to do things differently. Most people are worried about risk, but it's actually doing things differently. We have to manage those risks, but also doing things differently. But it all comes down to culture change. And it's how that measuring that care in order to make somebody feel free and independent. And safeguarding, if you give people the freedom, ensuring that they are safe. And making sure that, if that person has a complex support need, how we can work together with them. Lack of public awareness we identified as well. So these are the themes from the events that we actually identified. So we've identified a number of barriers for direct payments. They're probably not new to any of them, but I thought, I'd share the information so that everybody is aware of them. Lack of options for direct payments is one of them. And actually having to set up the direct payment can be quite a slow process because setting up a new bank account, etc. can take time. Recruitment of PAs. We understand that can be an issue. And training and support of the PAs as well, and having a DBS check, which can take time. These are the themes that we are aware of and we picked up through the different events that we have, but we're trying to make sure that the workforce keeps going. And we had a look into the system and the processes and the barriers of direct payments. Of course, time equals task. It's the complete opposite end of the spectrum. It's the spirit of the Social Services and Wellbeing Act. Sometimes they are complete opposites. but it has to be right for that person. It has to be what that person wants. So the consideration has to be whether or not that direct payment is suitable for the person. And making sure that there's training available and the workforce actually develops as well. I know, and some people think, well, right, okay, if we just let that person please themselves and spend it on what they want, how can we monitor what care and hours they're receiving? So that's another barrier that came up. And sometimes the commissioning practice actually is a restrictor. It could be the budget is not enough, the local authorities trying to save money, all these type of things. It could be lack of flexibility. People don't want to bank hours, they don't want to extend their time. So that's the system restrictions we are actually identifying, we actually have been fed back. We've worked with the All Wales Direct Payment Forum, and we think this is brilliant. There's 31 good examples of direct payment use in this document. They're all real-life examples, and they're simple, but they are real. But hopefully that's a starting point for the conversation, so people think, oh, if that local authority's done that, well, why can't I do it? So, in summary, this is what we're going to do next. We've actually been thinking about what we have learnt. We've shared our learning. Most people already know about it, but we want to make sure that we keep in touch. So if there's anything that is missing, please do let me know. We talked about the survey and want to make sure that we check with our partners how we can develop, how can we can sort of get the information out to the sector, and making sure that what matters programme and that conversation continues. I've already explained briefly about care and support at home, and those 3 parts of the plan that will continue, and those will have direct payments in them. And the last one as well, which is what I'm leading on at the moment, is actually focusing on community resilience and having a look at how the community can come together to become resilient and become stronger. Direct payment does potentially have a role in that. Positive risks is another aspect. This is with regards to care and support at home. I've already mentioned it earlier, but sometimes people say, oh, that's a big risk, can't do that. How can we prevent that risk? How can we manage that risk? How can we minimise that risk or even avoid it altogether? Sometimes actually avoiding risk is worse. People have to go through risk sometimes. Obviously from commissioning, it's a very different topic, but positive risk is about a shared decision. And we've had a focus group on it, and direct payments did come up about that. So we think direct payments, community resilience, positive risks, there are links between the 3. I'm just now starting to actually look into a direct payments hub, which is Social Care Wales Online, so pooling all the different resources together so it comes to one point. It's just starting, so I don't have much information to share on that. But, maybe if Disability Wales runs another direct payments event in years to come, then we can give you more information. But thank you ever so much for listening.
Thank you, Jeff. I think it's really helpful to know what's going on at that strategic level, in the work of Social Care Wales, the resources that are being made available, but also, how you're looking to try and fill those gaps. That's really good. Thank you so much for that. Again, Jeff, are you around for the rest of today? Yes. You're around for lunch, so if people want to come and have a chat with you, that'd be great. Okay. Can I thank all our panel of speakers this morning? I think because we are running over, I think what we'll do is we'll go up to lunch, but all are available to have a chat. If you've got any questions or just a discussion with them, any of them, please, don't be a stranger. So we'll finish this morning's session. Lunch is being served upstairs in the canteen behind the reception desk. And if you come back at 20 to 2, have I got that right? Yeah, 20 to 2. Thank you all very much. Diolch yn fawr iawn, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.